Evening.
How we doing?
Good, good. For dinner at my parents', so we'll see how the internet connection goes, but fingers crossed it should be fine.
Yeah, and family stuff.
Yeah, just good to come out and spend some time with them rather than frantically trying to get stuff done. Then you only ever get
That
a
sounds like a
fraction.
nice change of pace.
Yeah, you only ever get a fraction of what you want to do done, and yeah,
It's important to set aside time for family like that.
yeah,
Not that I personally, but for other people.
yeah. Especially as both parents are getting on a bit, and it's like, yeah, they're not going to be around forever, so it's important to spend time with them.
Yeah, bit of thinking on that on the in-law side, but
Mm,
there as well.
yeah. To dive right into it a bit, the thing that was on my mind, now there's a few aspects to it, and it's going to be a little bit nebulous while I try and sketch out what I'm talking about because I have a handle on about a quarter of it and some idea of about half of it.
All right.
So, as
I have
usual,
no idea what's coming, by the way, just for everyone.
yep,
This is going to be entertaining.
you didn't read the show notes, but
Nope, completely blindsided.
yeah, so I'll try and sketch it out in a semi chronological way so that my thought progression makes sense.
All right.
Um, I thought I'd been having was about the sense of a need to ask for permission to be strong. But I realized that that was not the question, if that makes sense. Like the problem was never the problem. It was more that I didn't know what strong was. And then this connected to, or feels like it connects to something else that had been crossing my mind of I'd talked previously about, you could say, intrusive thoughts. I think it fits in that category of sort of the idea that if a tragedy were to occur to me or before me, then life would be more interesting. Which, in one sense, is crazy. In another sense, is hang on a minute, this means something worth thinking about. And what I have so far concluded it represents is the return of a repressed sense or desire for adventure. And so then the question became, what does the need for adventure look like if you repress it? Because I've always, or in recent times, sought out stability and predictability and wanted to stay away from unpredictable situations. But I'm thinking now that there is still that need for finding a deep end to dive in. And a lot of it sounds very logical, but it's still a bit new and I'm trying to integrate it into the rest of me. And I think it connects back to the thought of wanting to ask permission to be strong, which I think now is not knowing what that is, that a working definition of strong might be choosing your course in the adventure of life and not being dissuaded from that course just because there are a few storms. Because when you think of a strong person, like, okay, there's physically strong, you can lift a heavy thing, but you can have someone who is very physically weak who can still be a very strong person. And it seems more like strength of will and determination to not be turned aside from their course. It's like, I decide to do this thing, and no matter how much opposition I face, no matter what the obstacles are, I will pursue that course as long as I decide that is the course I set, and I will only turn away from that course by my own choice and not by someone else's attempt to dissuade me. And that's about as far as I've got so far, I think.
Okay. Hmm. A few questions popped up here and there throughout that, but
Mm.
first I'd say it doesn't particularly surprise me that you're having this kind of instinct pop up, as you've been hyper focused on stability for a long time, accruing resources, making sure that your future is taken care of financially, and you're living below your means, set up. Just thinking which way. So what is your adventure? What are you doing that's meaningful to you?
The quick answer that feels wrong is what I do for work. And the reason that felt wrong is it's slaying someone else's dragon, in a sense. Like if you're given a
Mm,
task, it can be fulfilling and worthy of the effort. But I found that at the moment I'm hand drawing the technical drawings for fabricating a whistle from steel. Reason for hand drawing instead of CAD is if you take it from sitting down at the CAD computer through to having the finalized drawings that you know are accurate, CAD you get through to some drawings very quickly, but then it's like, oh no, we need to change that bit. Oh, that bit's not how we wanted it to be, and so on. And the number of revisions that you get through that process before you finally get the end result is similar to sitting down with the a few hand sketches and calculated numbers that you'd also have at the start of the CAD, that's sitting down that with that in front of a piece of paper to draw the drawings. You hold your pencil and say, ah, where does this line go, and why does it go there, and how do I know that I won't need to redraw it? And so that having to think about every aspect of it as you draw it on there helps you to make less silly mistakes along the way. And so the theory is that the start to end drawing time is similar, but you end up with a much more thought out and consciously understood piece at the end of it. But I'm working on
mm,
this, and it's good work, but it's a little tedious, and it hasn't been fully satisfying that drive of a challenge to get my teeth into. And it's a very long winded way of saying that work's good, but that's not the adventure. And I don't really know what is. And the best guess I have at the moment is either hobbies, which no, that doesn't really fit either, or going out into new social situations to be seen in order to hopefully attract someone who's attracted to what I have to offer.
mm.
And that's my best guess
This
at the
is the
moment.
last man problem, I think.
Hmm. Not familiar with that one.
It's from Nietzsche's work. The idea that we'll form a society that slays so many dragons that there's no great struggle left to fight. When you have a generation of men without meaning,
Hmm.
lost and listless.
The dragons are certainly not obvious anymore. Like going to the
That's for sure. There's no war. That's
yet.
just. Um, in terms of your work, I'd say you're right in saying it's not your dragon. It's also a byproduct of the kind of personality that is questioning and seeks answers for themselves, which I imagine we both are, and probably anyone who listens to this podcast is as well. By its nature is unstable.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this a lot and talking about it with my wife as well, that for me personally, and perhaps this extends to you as well, I don't know if I'll ever be happy in some final state in my life. Because it seems that most of humanity is happy just doing whatever thing they're doing and dealing with their little problems. But a personality that is seeking, questioning, thirsting after adventure by nature may never be satisfied,
It's almost
regardless of what it does.
It's almost like the dragon that the seeker needs is the seeking.
Yeah. And perhaps we haven't found a dragon big enough. And there's plenty of big dragons in the world, but they're obfuscated. You know, there's a lot of big fights out in the world, but they're hard to get to.
I was
Get
thinking
involved in.
I was thinking that those other dragons have already been defined. People are taking ownership of them, and so you look at it as like, oh, you've got that. Okay, good. I support you in that, but that's not my dragon.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things and causes you could go and join, but they're not creating. It's not your cause. Perhaps there's a certain subset of people who are meant to find a new cause and go after it. I do wonder how that would have played out for me if I hadn't run away from the protests when they happened in this country. Perhaps I'd be one of those people who got arrested and then was at the forefront of that issue on the political stage. That would have been a good challenge for me, but it's beside the point. No matter how engaging your job is, you'll have days that are, well, work. Tedious things you'd rather not do.
Yeah, so it's necessary, and I see the value in it, and I see the progress, and it's work I am happy to do, but
you need your own cause. It tells me that you don't believe in it too much.
Well,
like maybe you do, but you don't care about it that much.
I have ownership of my little part of it, and I really want to see the overall thing succeed, but I'm not the one steering it. I'm perfectly happy to lend my strength to an oar. It's a worthy ship to row, but
you'd like to be a captain.
There is a need to have a ship of mine that I steer.
Well, I'm not going to be able to give you an answer on that one.
All I hope for is
yourself,
discussion.
But
yeah. I think the bigger question that that is potentially more valuable that I'm attacking at the moment is the question of strength and the definition of strength in relationship to the personal adventure is possibly more useful in terms of defining the strength than the adventure itself.
Well, on that topic then, you mentioned before that you felt like you had to ask permission. From who?
The insight I've got into that sense, to lay it out a little bit, it was permission from a partner, a romantic partner. But I think that what I was hoping for out of that, rather than permission, it was direction or definition. So it's like, okay, what is strength? I want to be strong. What does that mean? Oh, it means this. Okay, I'll do that type definition.
You want the answer.
Yeah, but that also feels like it wouldn't be a good way to achieve the answer.
Yeah, you certainly don't ask your romantic partner for that.
And
interesting. How was your father as a role model for this sort of thing?
He did his thing and still does his thing. Um,
Okay, that was unexpected. Do you want
yeah,
to elaborate?
he. Hmm. The best example would probably be how he interacted with the yacht club because he wanted something that he wanted a recreational activity that he could involve the rest of the family in. Previously, it had been gliding for him, but that wasn't very good with small kids. And moving down to where we live now, that wasn't going to be practical. And so he looked around and thought he'd go sailing because he'd already sort of taken that up on the side as a hobby a little bit. But when he joined the yacht club, it wasn't sailor orientated as such. It was very much the people who'd been doing it this particular way for decades or a century were doing it that way. And you come along, you join in the game, you go home. And he wasn't satisfied with that, so he was like, we want to do this. So he and a few others who he convinced to join him or who were of like mind went off and did their own thing. And since he started that and sort of just slowly the old guard got relegated to the sidelines, and now, or for a good number of years now, the club has been run in almost the opposite sense of the race officer who previously would decide this is what we're doing today, goes and asks the sailors, would you like to do this or this or this? What would you like to do? And then stays out on the water until the sailors have had enough sailing, rather than doing three races and saying, okay, that's enough, we're going home now. I want to have a cup of tea or a beer or something. And he had his thing that he wanted to achieve and he just sort of went and did it. And that similar sort of pattern plays out in stories, work stories of his, or the way he built the house. It was like he wanted a house that wouldn't rot or fall down. He didn't like the wood construction that's common for his matchstick houses, and so he built his house out of 6-inch reinforced concrete, which sounds a bit overkill, but one of the builder's cards bounced off the wall mid construction. The wall was fine, the car was not. And it's held together in the earthquake. And being an aircraft engineer, it's level from one end to the other to within a few millimeters. And so he did the thing that he wanted to do the way he wanted to do it. And other people saying that's not the way to do it wouldn't dissuade him from that. He would listen and then decide to include or not include that advice, but he would not be dissuaded just because someone thought it was a bad idea. He might um, not take on a massive storm, if that makes sense, in the course he wanted to plot. But if someone said that's a bad course to plot, he would work out why they said that and then make his own decision. And so yeah, so that's the role model of strength that I have. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Mm. Do you ever see him push back on someone else?
Not in a conflict sense. There would be arguments, but more like friendly disputes. Sort of angry arguments would be retreated from as not worth the effort.
Mm, I could see that. From the sounds of it, a lot of his personality is mirrored in you and the way you've modeled yourself after him. And it seems
Yes,
curious that you have this question continuously popping up.
I think part of it may be to do with um oh, what do we an ongoing quest for self improvement and possibly an attempt to fill a sense of inadequacy with regards to personal attractiveness, and the evidence that I don't have a partner indicating that I'm insufficiently attractive, and trying to work on bits of that as I perceive them to improve that situation or to
Mm.
attract someone.
How was he with you?
Just trying to find the right descriptors. The first ones that come to mind are friendly. Like it wasn't. There's videos I've seen of. Uh, no, that's not the best way to describe it. I'm burbling a little bit while my brain comes up with examples, I think.
It can be more specific if that's
Hmm.
helpful.
Yeah.
Was he authoritative
No.
with you? No. That was very quick no.
Yeah, it wasn't these are the rules and thou shalt obey them, or hellfire will descend. It was
Didn't say aggressive.
no, not aggressive. It was yeah, that's true. It was hmm. The image I'm getting is he's doing his thing in workshop or on the computer or something, and I'm welcome to go and engage and welcome to come and see what he's doing and join in to whatever extent I feel like, or ask for help. If I wanted to build something, it would be, well, here's some tools, here's some basics, and then doing things would have to be me driven for them to occur. So
Can
if
you remember a time of him telling you no?
it's not something that sticks out in my memory. The authoritative
Mm.
one was mum.
Okay. How was their relationship when you saw them interact, specifically around this issue? What springs to mind? Could you describe it?
Just thinking about how family holidays would go, that they'd decide on a location to go, and mum would prefer something with more creature comforts, and this is also informed by things I've heard since I was that young, but mum would prefer something with more creature comforts, and dad would prefer something a bit more remote, and so they'd come up with something like going to a batch uh, in a remote area where it's a fully serviced batch, but a little bit of travel away, like a few hours drive and maybe a boat ride. Um, and mum would be fussing about all um, the little details, the food and so on, and dad would not be interested in any of that organization, and possibly complain of there being too much fussing and too many boxes of food to bring. And he'd just be
Complain
about,
how?
in a semi-joking way, like um, things like there being enough food to feed an army or something. Not that exact phrasing, but that sort of um, idea that you don't really need all that stuff. It's like
Is he having fun with it, or is he sort of being begrudging about it from your memory?
50-50. It's like it's as in it's
Okay.
annoying to um, deal with all the stuff, but he doesn't really.
But he has to.
Yeah, he has to.
Okay.
It's not a fight worth
No,
fighting.
that's good. Um, okay. And what about Her relationship with you, how was that?
As a
You said
child,
she was the more authoritative one.
yeah, yeah, I saw Mum more as the more authoritarian one. Uh, she grew up in a Dutch
Authoritarian.
house. Yeah, she grew up in a Dutch household, and the Dutch are not known for their subtlety. Uh,
No.
More bluntness, and you have to do this because that's the way you need to do it. And so, in the sense of forcefulness of word, Mum was the strong one.
Was she like that with him also?
No, no, that's Dad had stories of when he was younger, before he met Mum, of how his mum's uh, dictatorial rulership over the household had put him off anything like that in a relationship. So as soon as anything like that had come up in a past relationship, he'd said no and gone off because he'd seen his dad be ruled, essentially, and had no interest in that. And it occurs to me that Mum has some similarities to that when you compare Mum to, say, my interpretation of the average, but not towards Dad.
Interesting. Did you ever see them argue?
Sometimes, yeah, but it was cordial arguments, and if it started to move towards heated, Dad would probably walk off and
Hmm.
then come back and sort it out later.
So you didn't get the sense that he was being ruled.
No, he went and did his own things because he wanted to do them, and like, he's commented that the amount of solo recreation that he does would not be put up with by many women. And he's well aware of that and greatly appreciative of Mum's acceptance of that, and greatly appreciative of Mum's role in the household economy.
Hmm.
And he's commented about that role being underappreciated by many people historically and in the present. And yeah, so yeah, neither of them rule. It's not a fiery relationship on either end of the spectrum. It's comfortable and happy and cordial.
Okay, that's interesting. You mentioned before that you felt like you had to ask permission to be strong, be
Mm,
the authority. And you said that you felt that in relationship to romantic partners.
mm.
Do you think that might have come from your childhood?
Quite possibly, both in the my own experiences and my own childhood observations, in the sense of uh, I can't recall this very well, but Dad had stories of he would be doing something with me and I'd get all dirty as a child. And to Dad, this was a non issue. And then Mum would fuss and complain because I'd got all dirty. And Dad had one story of how think we were at the beach and he'd been doing things with me, and then Mum informed him that he couldn't let me get dirty again because she didn't have any more changes of clothes. And that hadn't occurred to him up to that point. And so the boyishness could almost be said to be bounded, or the allowed amount of boyish messiness could be said to be bounded by what Mum would allow. The other side of it, um, being that I'd never perceived Dad as how do you put it? Combatively strong. Like he wasn't aggressive, and I can vaguely remember a few times where I think I'd been a little brat in some way, and he got angry. I can't tell when that was also because he was having a tough time at work, because I know that he had stressful periods at work, but it wasn't a dominant thing. It was something I can look back on and yeah, that happened. It wasn't a big deal. Um, but in terms of strength of rulership, possibly, Mum was the strong one, and so like within the household where I existed as a child, Mum was the one who decided what went. So some mirroring of that into my own
Mm.
interactions with women, as well as a mirroring of my relationship with Mum in the possibly in the Freudian sense, which
Yeah.
yeah,
With your father, do you remember him imposing restrictions upon you? Boundaries, don't do this, don't do that kind of thing.
the boundaries I can think of were don't touch that, it's hot type boundaries, or be careful going into this room because the tools are sharp and there's metal shards on the floor from things that have been worked on. It's like
Are they advice or commandments?
it was more be careful doing this because if you're not
Mm.
careful you'll get hurt type rules.
It sounds more like I'm going to offer you some advice on here how you might get through this,
Yeah, and he'd
rather than this is the rule from authority.
yes, yeah, and if he saw me breaking something like that, I would expect a don't do that, you'll stand on a splinter, or something like that. Don't do that, it's dangerous type intervention rather than you shall not break my rules. That doesn't feel like something Dad would say.
Okay, that's interesting.
And the reason I'm trying to work my way towards this is that I now I understand in the intellectual sense that this is something that is associated with masculinity, which I seem to have insufficiently developed. And it also contributes towards attractiveness to women.
Mm.
And it contributes towards the ability to have success in endeavors.
Right. Okay. Do you see how it parallels to your current life circumstances and your previous relationship?
I can definitely see certain parallels to my past relationship.
Your relationship with your mother, or rather, more specifically, your father's relationship with your mother.
Yeah, there are some parallels. There are some obvious divergences,
Mm.
but I can certainly see the similarities. And then my current situation is a little bit. Uh, it's hard to say what is a parallel due to circumstances and what's a parallel due to psychology. It's like
Mm.
being a single parent imposes certain requirements on your. No, I was going to say behavior, but it's more, yeah, approach.
Mm. Not really.
Hmm.
There are plenty of single parents who do not limit their behavior.
Who are still good parents.
Mm.
Hmm. It's likely that most of, in that sense, it is likely that most of the behavioral choices are more psychological than
Yeah.
situational.
I'll simply say on that that there seems to me to be more than one way to raise a child.
Mm.
Good way. There's not one perfect solution that everyone should follow. It seems that a series of factors influence the personality of the child. And unless you're willing to say that one subset of personality types is inherently better than all the rest, you can't say that one type of parenting is inherently better than the rest. But I'll put that
Mm.
aside. From what you've told me, it sounds like you were accustomed to asking permission from your mother for things.
Yeah.
And you became accustomed to that. And because of that, were a vulnerable target for manipulative or psychopathic women during your dating life.
Mm.
You know, like the mugger who can tell which person he should go after that won't stand up for themselves. That kind of thing. Not saying that was conscious, but the sense can still be there.
Yeah.
And your father is your model for emulation. And while he may have been very well situated in and of himself, he did not demonstrate being a strong authority in relation to you, you who were a child. And I think there's something in that which it's not just who your parents were, it's how they interacted with you that you emulate.
Mm.
Like, for example, you said that your mother was authoritative, authoritarian, whichever you prefer,
Mm.
and very strict on you and giving you rules and requiring asking of permission. But she was not like that with him. Yet
Mm.
you took from that relationship with you, not the relationship between him and her.
Yeah. I think Dad was he was slightly more distant, like happy to interact, but in the sense that interacting with children for long periods of time can be exhausting.
Mm.
Or what was it? I think he mentioned that early on in their relationship, Mum had said she wanted kids, and Dad had. I'm trying to work out how to express this. He was happy with that, but
Needed space.
yeah, he needed space. He was doing his thing, and
Yeah.
he, like, there was something about him coming home from work and putting on earmuffs because he needed his space and didn't want to deal with a crying baby after a long day at work. And so
It's difficult for an introvert to raise children.
Yeah, yeah, I think I'd classify Dad as an introvert. Yeah, he
I'm in
spent
this. I'm in the same category. It's rough,
hmm, he spent
and
most of
it's a hard balance.
yeah, most of his working life was in relatively remote areas, working in uh, well, there was farming, there was working on ski fields, there was working on hydro dams, there was working at Mount Cook and the airfield there as a remote area. Um, and when deciding to move down to be close to Christchurch for a job there, the closest he was comfortable getting to the city was about half an hour's drive away. Yeah.
Did you ever have a over aggressive or violent period in your life where you became that way in a overreactiony sort of sense?
I don't remember having that sort of violence.
Okay.
No.
You're seeking a role model, I take it.
I'm
You've
not
been
I'm not sure what I'm
talking down this.
seeking. Yeah,
Well,
I'm
you've been talking down this line for a while of trying to develop the strength and aggression part of your personality and feeling like it's been underrepresented and underdeveloped.
because I feel like there's yeah, an underexploited or underdeveloped strength there, which is basically restating what you just said. It's there is something there.
I'm surprised that you've managed to keep it repressed this long. Like, I'm surprised it hasn't come out
Repressed doesn't
in
feel like the right
in
thing.
in an over exaggerated word way.
I feel like it's not so much containing or repressing it. It's more like unlit tinder.
Mm.
Like
I'm
the
reminded of the conversation you had of seeing the image of yourself, the predator part,
hmm.
untapped potential.
Yeah. Yeah, like
You did
there's
describe that creature as chained in that conversation, though.
yeah. There is I think there may be a couple of a few steps between the actions, as in between violent action and where I was starting. And I think that like the potential for aggression is not aggression, it's the potential for it, and it's the potential itself that was repressed, not the
Mm.
aggression. Like if you have someone who feels
Never got the
anger.
chance to get off the ground.
Yeah, yeah, like someone who's
Right.
got impulses towards violence and is containing them is a very different thing to someone who's repressing the potential for those impulses in the first place. And I think that's what I've that's where I am.
Sounds like you made that decision very young.
Hmm. Yeah, like there was a recent experience I had, which I won't go into the details, but the characters involved could be interpreted as aspects of my subconscious or um, creations of my subconscious for the purpose of the conversation, you could say, or gods and entities helping, whatever. Had a conversation with one about this, and this figure goes by the identity of the Greek god Apollo, who entire metaphysical discussion I'm just going to skip. But I had a meditative conversation with him, and it was interesting. Usually, Um, it didn't go the way the conversations usually go. It was like, okay, sit down here. Okay, now get angry and attack me. And it was like, okay, in the sense of sparring, and it's like, no, just the figure playing out the scenario in my head and how much. Oh, it's one of those things where the normal ways of referring to stuff doesn't quite work, but to use the first person perspective, I came at him in a sparring sense and he'd slapped me down and it's like, no, real, come at me for real with some aggression and encouraged me to do that and bring out that aggressive action within the scenario playing out in my mind. And once I got that there, I was like, okay, sit down. Remember this, sort of holding some of the sparks I'd been giving off in that actual aggressive intent to hurt. It's like attacking someone you know is far stronger that you'll never actually hurt, but with the intent to cause injury. And it's like, okay, here, remember that strength. And
It's malevolence. I was just thinking,
mm,
we have two individuals who are fighting in a ring. You know, it's a civil fight, gentlemen's rules, all of that. The person who will win is the better trained. But if you put the same two people on the street and it's a fight to the death, I don't think the result is always going to be the same.
mm,
I think it will come down, or will more come down to the person who is able to manifest the most malevolence to the other person.
yeah, because even if one is more injured, if he bites the other guy's ear off and the other guy backs off, he wins.
Yeah, yeah, because the second one person is thrown or phased or scared, it's over for them.
Mm,
You can be the person who would lose in the cage but win on the street by having that encounter. It's really evil. It is. I'm just examining the feelings of myself and the thoughts I've had on this before, that the spirit of evil and the spirit of true violence is, I don't think, distinguishable. And if you intentionally closed yourself off from allowing yourself to do immoral actions or the potential of evil,
mm.
then you don't have the potential of strength.
Childhood exposure to the Catholic Church may have contributed to this.
Perhaps.
Because I remember going along to church with mum when I was younger, but then she became disillusioned with that, and that stopped after a while. But it was every Sunday, and I was doing my best to be a good person according to that rule set. And oh,
A weak person. It's that line that Peterson always says, that
mm,
not being able to do evil things does not make you good. It makes you weak. A good man is one who could very easily do the evil things, but never does, out of principle and restraint.
there's something catching in my processing of that that
Mm.
I can very easily process scenarios in a abstract sense, like, oh, this movie person got their limb chopped off, or they got a molten metal mask poured on their face, so they have to spend the rest of the movie like that. And it's like, oh, this character was particularly brutal and stabbed that one through the leg and killed them that way. It's like you can process that very easily in the abstract sense. But so I can conceive of it, but I can't conceive of doing it unless
You ever
it's.
hated someone?
I don't think so. I chose. I knew that I did not want to hate my ex, despite stuff associated with that, because I perceived that as more of a burden on me than anything else. It was, and I still think of hate as more harmful to the one hating than anyone else, but it feels like that's overly simplistic.
Maybe. I don't know enough about it. I imagine there's some utility. You don't strike me as the type of person who would brood in resentment. I'm
No,
trying to imagine a scenario where you've sort of mused on thoughts of revenge or hatred, and I can't.
yeah,
Doesn't seem you.
where anger towards my ex has come up, it's been something I've worked to process. And the way I've seen anger characterized is that it's a secondary emotion in the sense of you get angry because you're hurt or scared or something like that. And so
A thing
it's,
needs to be resolved.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah, and
so,
conflict is justified in resolving it. Mm. This is interesting. You've dealt with yourself so well and you're so healthy that you've skated through life without encountering true darkness. In yourself, at least.
and now I'm slowly going looking because I feel like the darkness has something that I need.
It does.
Like there was
Um,
like just in terms
it's
of what I feel like the darkness has that I need. Like Peterson had that story of a woman who was persecuted by her university in Canada, I think it was, because of showing one of Jordan Peterson's a clip of him talking in her course that she was teaching as a teaching assistant, where she was teaching communication, and so she gave something that he or she put up a video of him talking as an example of communication or something like that. And so the university came down on her like a ton of bricks and demanded that she apologize and all these sort of things. And she said no. And that ability to say no and stand there and take whatever, but not be cowed is what I seek, I think. Because I'm rather cowable.
it's interesting that in my mind there's an association with the spirit and feeling of doing that and swearing at someone.
Yeah, yeah, I get that.
Like that feels like the same thing.
I don't swear.
Yeah, of course, you're homeschooled.
Well, more than that,
You
like,
you didn't have the
no, it's more than that.
competition, rivalry, hatred of those around you.
No, I decided that I would not swear. Like, Dad would say shit. I don't. Like, this isn't an academic like discussion, so that's the context that I'm bringing it up in. But when I swear, it's flip or frack.
Not foreign.
I don't use what's
It's a
mentally.
great example of your character. You know, I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything, but it's certainly something that I've observed about you, and my wife has also, from
Mm,
effectively the day we met you. That you're very interesting you're a very interesting character. You're all over the place. You've got these really cool ideas, and you're interesting to talk to. But you're not serious. You're not a person with whom people instinctively weight anything. Does that make sense?
I think
Your
so.
ideas, your ideas are serious, and you can have serious intellectual discussions, but it's hard to take you seriously. Is
Hmm.
probably the better way of saying that, because you have this missing element. There's no danger to you. You're safe. That's probably the best description I can think of.
In some ways, I perceive that as a good thing, but in others, I feel like
Yeah,
it's
it's really not.
more complicated than that. Well, the
Well,
the
how
the example I'm thinking of is recently, like this week, I was dropping my son off at school, and I was roughhousing him a little bit as part of saying goodbye to him, and then he was joining in with that with glee, and then I ended up under a pile of children that like I'd been picking him up, and then he started climbing on me from the side, and then two other kids joined in, and my hands were out sort of in open air while they climbed on me from the sides and the back, and the teacher was right there talking to another teacher. So it's not like I was doing anything, but they'd started climbing on me, and then later, I'm not sure if it was that day or the day after, I was waiting in the playground for him after I'd come to pick him up, and he'd gone to have a last climber around the playground. And while running round, another one of the kids came up and grabbed me around the waist, and my hands were in my pockets. And at that age, their head is about groin height, which is slightly awkward, but they don't understand it. So, okay. And I think the kid's dad was there, and he'd seen this kid come up and grab me and then run off again. I think I was as much something to hide behind from another kid, so more part of the scenery than anything else, but also like an adult who was fun. So in that sense, I feel like being safe is good, but I
I
feel
think you're
like I'm missing.
conflating things there.
Yeah, I think I'm missing some steps here.
Yeah, I think you're conflating kind with safe. A person can be a dangerous person that kids still really like spending time with.
Mm.
Like, I do my best to be that with the kids that I meet by, giving them attention and listening to them and talking to them. But I am by no means a safe person. And the kids are generally aware of that.
I feel like
I'm not quite sure
safe
how,
isn't
but
quite the right
okay.
word.
No, it
Possibly,
is.
well,
Because
well,
I'm
safe's
going
the
to
right
use
word with
the
a kiss.
example of woman.
Mm,
I think kids is a bad example, but I'm going to use the example of a mate, of a woman.
mm,
Women will choose men who are potentially dangerous to them if it means that they have a higher chance of protecting them against someone else.
mm.
Women will choose a criminal over a churchgoer in a lot of ways, because the criminal, while he may be unstable or violent, and potentially towards her or her children, certainly not going to just lay down and let someone worse roll over him to get to her.
Mm.
And this is what I mean by safe.
Possibly
You
harmless
you
rather than
present
safe.
this.
Like you can be
Yeah,
safe to a person without being harmless.
I don't think any truly dangerous person is safe to anyone. And there's a thing that women seem to have where they like to help a man who is dangerous be safe enough. He's
Beauty
a
and
little on the edge,
Beauty and the
and that
Beast.
she helps keep him tamed, but knowing that he may not always be if pushed the wrong way.
I think there's something here to do with
She
that
should, yeah, she
early.
shouldn't feel like she can push you anyway.
Hmm.
And if she feels that she can, then I think like I said before, you're only going to attract the women who want to do that to you,
Hmm.
which is what you had with your ex. And that's not what you want, certainly, or you end up with another one of them.
Hmm.
And that would be pretty bad for you and husband, particularly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that
Um,
it may relate to the early Catholic Church stuff as well, in the sense of the internalized definition of what is good or what a good person is.
yeah.
And that's deep, unprocessed childhood stuff, which is hard to dig up and rewire.
You need to become dangerous. There's no other way about it. You are not dangerous enough.
What is dangerous? I'm not trying to be pedantic here. I'm trying to go over it in enough different ways that it sinks in.
The capability to enjoy murder.
Well, that's a stark one. I'll have to sit
Well, it's a
think on
good
that.
example. You describe seeing scenes in movies where people killed other people or stabbed them or whatever.
Hmm.
Could you enjoy doing that? Have you thought about it?
I think there's the response that comes up sounds like internally 10% or 5% yes, and then a big no slammed on top of that with a bunch
Mm.
behind that no.
You need to strip that away and try and sit in the emotional center of yes. In short, you need to develop your dangerous side. You have to face the part of you that could do horrific things and enjoy it.
It's probably not surprising that there is resistance here.
Well, no one wants to encounter their shadow because it's terrifying and it'll rock you to your core and it'll scar you for life. But you've developed as far as you possibly can without it. You're an incredibly well developed person in almost every single way, except for this one. And it may be the most important one. Probably is. And without it, all the other developments you had are cute at best. But this one would change that from, a smart boy with a lot of interesting and cute things to say to a dangerous and wise man. And that's the difference. Because I don't think anyone, women or men, will look at you as a man unless you have this aggression and dangerous side mixed in. And most people in the modern age get it from trauma foisted upon them in one way or another. And you're very well lucky that you have avoided all of that in your life, and that's great. But that just means you have to do it voluntarily, which is probably better, all things considered. But you didn't have someone in your early youth to help guide you through this, so it's a little past its optimal time. How about that?
Hmm. There was a
Uh,
guy I saw on YouTube describing sort of that process that you're talking about. He was talking about the role of a father, and how was it? He he'd had daughters, and then he had a son, and he was talking about the difference in raising them as a father. And there was it they were watching a robot boxing movie, Real Steel or something, and he said to his wife, "Watch this," or oh no, something about, "Do you know of this such and such?" No, what's that? It's the place where Spartans sent their children when they came of age to learn to be warriors. Now watch this. And this guy's a military vet, so he understands combat and violence. And so he was fighting with his son, and son was having fun, just fun roughhousing. And then he got his son in a hit that was strong for the son, but appropriately light from him. And the son got knocked back, and then he came back and just came at his dad, who was telling the story. And then his wife, the boy's mother's comment was, "What happened to my little boy? Or where did my little boy go?" Or something along those lines. And that sounds like the awakening of that potential for violence that you're talking about in a way where he could teach his son to handle it.
Interesting. Did your father roughhouse with you?
Roughhousing consisted of tickling
So
and
no,
and fun wrestling. It wasn't play violence as such.
right. There's no aggression in it.
No.
Interesting that your mind made that association,
Which one?
because I think that might be a rather important note that that didn't happen.
Hmm.
Obviously, I didn't have that either, but I had friends whom I seeked out because they were aggressive people, and I fought with them a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me develop that out.
I can't say that I
That
have ever had a fight. The closest I would have come was either sparring and karate, where it is obviously not.
aggression never manifested in those
Yeah,
situations,
yeah,
did
it
it?
was very controlled aggression.
Mm.
The other one would be my ex. When she got aggressive, there was malevolence in that.
You experienced it towards yourself,
Hmm.
but not towards someone else. You
Yeah.
haven't manifested it towards someone else. Well, the best I can say is you need to practice hate. Get a bit of the dark side in you. Now, how you want to do that is sort of up to you. When you want to do meditation, I don't know if, you know, engaging with violent video games or movies or something might help you. I'm not sure
The way I've
what you might be
been
able to do there.
what I've been working towards so far, which may sound all wishy-washy, but you know the feeling of different emotions. How when you feel most emotions, you can feel them through your whole body. I've been oh, most of the time it's while driving to work because that's a nice time when you can set your brain on autopilot essentially and think about other things. Um, Turn on the radio and trying to manifest a sense of strength and indomitability, but not aggression yet, but getting in that direction.
You're not going to get the result without walking through the darkness.
Yeah. I feel a need to ask to. Oh, there is a. Why? Now, I've got the intellectual reasons for it, and I could probably lay them out, but I want to go over the why it's needed. The the reasons that I
You
could
want your
come up,
son to respect you?
not a big motivator in the sense of I want him to live his life. He's not living his life for me. I'm here to get him to teach him how he needs to be to live a good life. Personal respect has never been a thing that bothers me much. The boy doesn't need to be
You've been
respected,
pushed
the man
over.
does.
Well, depends if you want him to be like you or not. You've been pushed over before in your life. Your ex springs to mind, but I'm sure there's other scenarios.
Yeah, the last boss I had, not the current boss, he's very much the opposite, but the last boss, uh,
Would you like it to happen again?
no, no, I want to be able to know where I stand and stand that ground and not be blown around like a flag in the wind of someone else's anger, but see it and listen. And if there's something I
How
need to
about
learn, I'll learn that, but I will stand my ground and say no if that's what I see is appropriate.
staving off tyranny to keep your son free from a country gone totalitarian?
That might be a little too large and impersonal to.
Well, if you couldn't stand up to your ex or a boss, how would you stand up to a nation?
Yeah, nation's a bit bigger. Need to possibly start smaller, but then is that just a way of worming out of it?
Well, point being, you certainly couldn't do that
Hmm.
in your current state.
Yeah.
And, you wanted a dragon. That was your dragon. But what makes you think you could stand up to any dragon at all right now?
I think that might be why I want the dragon. To
Want someone else to give you a dragon to
no,
develop yourself against?
sort of, yeah. Hmm. This might link into, or sounds rather a little bit similar to the ideations of personal tragedy, in the sense
Mm.
of like an anvil to shape a sword against. That I need something, the idea that I need something to fight in order to become strong. It's almost,
You
it
need
could,
something to explore.
it could be, hang on a minute, if if the dragon's external, then I don't have a choice, and I just have to
Yeah,
do it.
and then it's not on you to go and find it.
Yeah, but if I'm
Okay, when a dragon comes to eat you and you didn't go and find it, do you stand a chance?
no, the dragon that comes to you is probably bigger and worse.
And you're weaker
Hmm.
because you didn't go to find it. You weren't ready. It'll come when you're on the toilet at 3 in the morning, not when you're dressed in your battle suit.
Hmm.
My point is that when the dragon comes for you, you will be in retreat, and there'll be no recovery psychologically. Only through voluntarily going after it are you going to have any progress at all.
Hmm.
And like I said before, what makes you think you could stand up to a dragon in your current state if it came for you?
The plan of action that comes to mind boils down to run away, which probably says
Well,
enough.
there you go, yeah. And you're sort of floundering because you want someone to hand you a dragon so you don't have to, so you don't have to explore the dark place. Throughout this conversation, I've noticed you keep steering away from this. Even from the introductory to this, you started steering away straight away to what was going on in your job. Which I thought was interesting, because you brought up this topic, but you also seem to, a large part of you seems to not want to talk about it at all, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't like violence.
You need to go and explore the dark places in your soul and in the world. You need to go and look. You're not going to find a dragon that you can fight that's all pretty and made of flowers up above the ground. You need to go to hell and look in the heart of darkness, and there you'll find your dragon. And it will scar you. And that's always say you'll lose an eye. But you'll see better.
I'm not sure if this is dodging the question, but just thinking of practical approaches.
Mm.
The one that's come to mind is find, I think it's box fit. Like there's one nearby where I live. Basically, to have
No.
punching bags to be aggressive at.
I mean, sure. I mean, you can get a punching bag for your house, but that's not enough. It's a clean environment. You're trying to set up this structure in your peaceful modern world. You'll need to delve into the dark of history and face, the darkness of humanity. What people can do to each other, what they will do to each other, and why. And you need to put yourself in the positions of those people, both perpetrator and victim and bystander. I know you don't want to. It's pretty clear. And I don't blame you. I really don't. As someone who's gone through that, I've wrestled with it every day of my life of wow, maybe it would have been really nice if I didn't do that. But
But what you most need is where you least want to look.
yeah, that's exactly it. You want to be the developed person that you've been working on your whole life, this whole self-development and self-improvement thing you've been doing forever. You can't avoid this any longer. Just can't. And it's going to crush you for a while. The weight of it all.
I wonder if the Gulag Archipelago would be a good approach, or whether that would just be a book, a story then.
No, I think it'd be a good place. I mean, a good place as any. I was thinking that before, but I didn't want to say it just because I've referenced it too much. But it's designed to help people walk through this.
Okay. Well, that's helpful if it's made with that intent.
It's set up in that way because the book was designed to take people of the liberal mindset and ideal and show them the horrors that they created and get them to face it in their own soul. And it deals with what happens if you don't do these things. So not only will it expose you to dark things, it'll also teach you why it's necessary to even sacrifice your own life in saying no, and what the worst things that you'd be staving off in doing so are. And there's plenty of horrors in the universe and in our world that we could describe endlessly. I don't know if anyone would want to listen to that, so maybe we wouldn't do that, but yeah, I have plenty of things I could tell you that would scar you to the bone.
Mm.
But I feel like this is something that you should go and do on your own.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's me pushing things on you, and that defeats the point.
Yeah, it's probably superfluous to say that it's not an easy thing uh, to tackle, and has
No.
internal resistance
It's
in
not
the
an
way.
easy thing to recommend, even.
Mm.
Like, this is rather stressful for me. Just, reflecting on my time and how I feel even now with all of this.
Mm. I can conceptualize it and abstract it, and in the abstract, it doesn't carry the emotional weight.
And that's what you need to take out of it. The abstraction.
Mm.
A million deaths is a statistic, but a single death is a tragedy.
Mm.
You need to personalize it all. What if that was me? What if that was my child? What if that was my partner, my mother, my father? How would I feel? Let it sink home that the horrors of humanity could happen to you or the people that you care about, and experience the pain of that and the rage.
I think one of the holdups or blockages is a violence is never justified conception, which seems too absolute to be true, but at the same time, conceptions don't need to make sense or
I
subconscious.
think Gulag Archipelago is
Mm,
definitely the place for you because it addresses that quite thoroughly.
yeah.
You don't need to be violent. You just need to say no. And you need to be able to say no, knowing full well that the result of your choice is your death. And
Mm,
that's not something that someone's going to come to without the capacity for violence. How could you withstand torture if you're not able to hurt someone else? If the thought of violence is so abhorrent to you, how could you ever withstand it being used against you?
mm. Even playing out the scenario of being confronted in a mugging, say, and responding with what could easily be argued as justified violence. And winning. But then looking back at that in the scenario, and it's like what is it, soldiers are haunted by what they did, not by what they saw happened. Or they're haunted by their own actions.
They weren't aware of their capability of doing it before they went into the scenario.
Hmm.
It'd be like putting you on a battlefield right now, and then you fought to survive, and then afterwards, you having to face with what you did. Being a person who hadn't meditated through it, you would do worse things than the grizzled veteran next to you, because you wouldn't be controlled in your violence.
That sounds like a good point to focus in on a little bit. That it's, yeah, the control. It sounds like a good thing for violence to be controlled rather than out of control.
Mm.
But it would be easy to conflate that with harmlessness.
Well, you haven't formed a relationship with the spirit of violence within you. And just because you haven't been put in a situation thus far that has allowed the worst parts of you to be let loose doesn't mean you won't be. Your current, non-committal of violence is more circumstantial than it is moral or ethical.
Mm. Because abstractly, I can see situations where I would feel that it would be justified, mainly threat to family in an immediate personal sense.
Yeah, but thinking doesn't fight your way out of a horrible situation.
Yeah, and even in that situation, it's like if someone falls and trips and hits their head wrong, they're dead.
Mm.
And even if fully controlled, given a chaotic, in the sense of even if rampaging of the spirit of violence did not occur, that would still be a potentially haunting outcome.
Mm.
And
Well, that's assuming you had the will to act.
mm,
Like, you can be well trained, you can be mentally justified in committing the action, but it doesn't mean that you'll actually have the stomach to do anything if the time came.
mm,
The skill to do a thing and the capacity to do the thing are not the same.
mm,
Without the will to break someone else, I don't know if you'd be able to do it. And maybe you would, but there's something to be said about having the part of you that is perfectly willing to do it and maybe enjoys it a little too much. And whether you want to admit it or not, that part is there. It not
mm,
being conscious just means it's unconscious. And if it's unconscious, then it'll be acting in ways that you're not aware of or not in your control.
mm.
And all it would take is a trigger, a scenario where it could come out, and you would end up doing things you weren't aware of.
Yeah, because I've long felt that there was a internal berserker switch, which has never been pushed.
Yeah. You might need to find a time and place to push it. Create scenarios in which that path is allowed to play out. Like taking a dog for a walk or a run, or training a muscle or a skill.
Mm,
Having a scenario where you can let it loose a little bit. Video games seems like a weird place, but perhaps that has some advantages. Fictional extreme violence to let loose whatever psychopathic or psychotic impulses may be there,
So that
and
it
to
may
bring them into
be,
the conscious.
yeah, brought into the fold, so to speak, so that if it
Mm.
becomes necessary, it can be
Called upon.
used, yeah, used without running wild.
Yeah, bounded.
Hmm.
If you used it all, like there is a good chance that you would just not be able to use it at all and be frightened into inaction.
Hmm. Well, if
And
it's
then it's not something you can protect, whether or not you'd be blown off the handle and done things that you would regret and traumatized by, or just frozen in fear.
hmm. Yeah, if it's unconscious, it's you pushed until a threshold that you don't know, and then once you're over the
Yeah,
threshold, you have no control. But if it's conscious,
yeah.
then
And
you
that
can.
threshold could be far too high
Hmm.
and useless. Like,
Yeah.
no idea the structure of the systems there.
Hmm. And considering the way that other aspects of my psyche that I've previously explored were, what was it? Anger was conceptualized as a shotgun with a U-shaped barrel. It was pointed back at me.
Yeah, that's a bad conception.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a conception I've been trying out that I came across in a story, fictional but potentially useful mental tool of burning, like burn fear into anger to give motivation and strength. And being from a fictional story, it'll be not uh, not fully fleshed out, but I thought that might be a useful component. Hmm.
Mm. Well, it sounds to me like you've got a lot to work on
Yep.
and think about.
Should we
Well, I
leave
hope
it?
it was helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think it.
I think it's a good place to stop, and I'm hoping it was helpful, but
Yeah,
hard to tell.
I think it won't be the last time because, like, you've talked previously about how something that I came across to process subconsciously went very quickly, and you talked about how such things often take much longer. And
Mm.
I think that was discovering the aspects of the self that link into this, but discovering their existence and,
Integrating them
yeah, integrating
is,
are two different things.
yeah. I was gonna say it's evidenced by this. It didn't happen as quick as I thought, but you opened the door
Mm,
at least. And I think now's the time to step through it, see
mm.
what's it like in the dark.
And even when a few steps are taken in the direction of that integration, it's easy to slide back to where it's comfortable.
Everyone likes the idea of being safe, but if you want a woman to take you seriously in your life, you're gonna have to venture into the dark a little bit.
Mm.
You'll find your inner demon and shake hands.
I feel like the way of meeting the inner demon would be more take him on and become him in the sense of
Yeah,
just
that is
fight him.
exactly what it is.
And by beating him,
No, you don't beat him.
well, the conception I've got is that,
You join.
yeah, yeah, but by winning the fight, in quotes, you take his strength so that rather than being a separate part conceptually, that strength, you can't beat it unless you're as strong as it, whatever aspects of internal
You're missing the
violence.
point.
Yeah, I'm over conceptualizing it.
No, because if you beat it, then it's this part of you beating out and dominating that part of you and getting rid of it. You're not in a fight to get rid of this part of you. It's half your soul.
Mm.
You need to, I think I've said this before, but the both of you need to speak with the same voice. Like two halves of your face being one and the other.
Mm.
And to both agree on how to speak and act. And nothing feels more powerful than that. Half angel, half devil. And both willingly going along together.
I get the feeling that that aspect wouldn't be very, wouldn't have any respect for the rest of me.
Might be surprised. I've just gone through this recently with my wife. I don't know if I've told you. Probably not. But I helped her negotiate with that part of herself as well. She did it quickly. Never seen anything like that. That was amazing. And I got through by allowing myself to speak solely with the voice of the dark side of me. And had that part solely talk to the dark part of her. They struck up a bond and relationship and negotiated terms for interacting with the good halves. This is a part of you that needs to be respected and heard. And it's not some small piece off in the corner that you use as a tool. It is as if there's only two of you, and you need to be on the same team.
Mm.
Have some respect for that part.
Yeah, I was thinking that it wouldn't have much respect for me as much as that word means something in this context, but
I'm sure it has some choice words to say about the situation thus far, because it's lived inside you for this entire time and you had very little respect for it. But that doesn't mean that it will always not respect you. It'll want to reconcile. It'll want to be heard. And it'll have its piece to say that it will not be too pleasant towards you. But I can guarantee you that those are the words that you need to hear most. And they will be harsh. But when it's said its piece, you can invite it to play. And it'll want to, because it wants to be at the table with you as an equal. That's what it means to integrate. It's a part of your soul. And being that we're human beings, it's probably about half of us. Better to have it at the conscious table as an equal and a friend than an enemy underneath in your subconscious, twisting your life and inviting others to prey upon you.
Slight tangent that I just remembered a talking point that I'd thought of before this that might link into this, but I talked about the need to find my own dragon, and something I had thought of in connection with that was the idea that that subconscious need might manifest as a form of self-sabotage in the sense of I need
Yeah.
something interesting to happen, and this feels like it might also manifest in some similar way.
Do you think that has happened in your life already?
The relationship with the ex is the prime one that comes to mind.
There's probably a reason for that.
Hmm. But it's also a bit cloudy to think of. I think I'll have to meditate on it tonight.
Yeah. I'd say you've got a fair bit of that to do.
Hmm.
Try not to be a being of light so much for the time being. Go delve into the darkness, not to experience it, but to become it. Let the part of your soul that is the dark part take upper hand and full control for a while. Negotiate with it, and then come back to be half and half. What I have noticed is that even as equals, it wishes to serve the light, which is interesting. But it needs to be treated with respect, which means you need to embody it, something like that.
That's an interesting idea.
Become it
That
and be
the
one with it.
the idea of the darkness once brought forward and accepted, wanting to serve the light. It's not what I expected.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's that old thing about the devils being truly the highest angel in service of God.
I've heard that phrase before, but not the background to it.
It's meant to be a spirit of rationality, but there's also a sense in which he's set up on purpose as an adversary and but an ally to God.
Hmm.
That he is on the team, and there's no one that the devil punishes more than those who commit evil.
Hmm.
Yet he tests to see if you will. He doesn't force you to do it, he invites you to. Yeah, I
Hmm.
don't know, but I do get that strong sense that once aligned, the dark shadow part of the soul will work for the goals of the light, but is definitely the part of the soul that puts the foot down when it's time to.
Hmm. I think I'll have to go meet
If,
him.
yeah, yeah,
I got an image
I
of
sit
walking out into
at the
the
table.
mindscape wilderness and banging a sword on a shield, like, where are you? Like, come get me. Which,
Well, you're very good at disengaging your logical mind and going into the realm of myth and idea and conversing. So I think this will go well for you. And I'm sure you'll have some fantastical, horrible visions, which would be very good for you.
I hadn't thought of that as disengaging the logical mind, which helps me possibly define what the logical mind is by what it isn't.
Well, it's certainly not unconscious.
Hmm. I think what is the logical mind is a question for another day.
Yeah, I got some certain thoughts on that, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot of respect for it at this point.
I think it would be a worthwhile discussion for another time. So, should we call it quits
Yeah,
there?
I think we should. I need to go to bed. I'm
Okay.
very tired. I'm getting more carbs in the morning.
Okay. Oh
Halfway though. Halfway.
well.
Doing alright.
Well done.
Yeah, it's only gonna get busier though.
Yeah. Oh, well. Good
So good
night.
night, everyone.
Yeah. Night, everyone.